how much is Jesus?
You gonna always see me smiling. I'm gonna show you what real restoration looks like.
All right.
Okay, welcome once again to the BlaCc Jesus show. Today, we're going to talk about collateral sanctions. Collateral sanctions are arbitrary restrictions that's placed upon people after leaving prison. Or sometimes you don't even have to go to prison, but basically for having a criminal record. But I brought a mind on that's greater than mine on the subject, and that is Mr. Stephen Johnson-Grove from Movement Law Labs. How you doing, Stephen?
I'm doing well. Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Okay. All right. So, this is something that actually plagues our community, the consequences from collateral sanctions. So, could you explain to the people exactly what collateral sanctions are and why we should get rid of them?
Yeah, I mean, there are thousands. You're in Ohio prison. I worked for about 15 years in Ohio only on collateral sanctions. That's all I did. So yes, there are many, it's hundreds, probably thousands of these laws in Ohio books. Every state has them. And there are some form or another of, if you have thus and such criminal record, you cannot do X, Y, or Z. And you can get them from having misdemeanors. You can get them from having felonies. It does not, as you suggested, definitely does not require prison time. And in some ways, for many people, and they may not know this when they're pleading guilty, those collateral consequences are worse, longer lasting, affect their life more than even like the specific criminal punishment. Especially if like your criminal punishment is like probation or something like that, you're not actually going to prison or jail. You're like, cool, great, I don't have to go to behind bars. But then like, oh, I lose my license and I can't do that job and I can't do this job. It's mostly job related. It's not only job related. Most of them, though, are related to holding some kind of employment or a license like that is required to have employment, like a barber's license or a cosmetology license.
Yeah, so it basically locks up into second-class citizenship is what you
Yeah, and it covers huge areas. It's super complex. It's not easily mapped to say this specific offense is going to trigger these consequences or those consequences are related to these offenses. It's a bramble bush of complexity.
Yeah, and most of them are invisible. When you get sentenced by the judge, they're not telling you you're going to have 44,000 things that you can't do after your prison sentence or once you got put on probation. So. Let me ask you this. Do you think that collateral sanctions actually add to public safety? And the reason I ask this is because most people say we have to have these offender lists or we need to know that whether you got a criminal past or criminal history because it is something that keeps the community safe. Do you agree with this?
Well, this is a great question. I think most of them are overbroad. There's too many of them, and the ones that are there cover too many things and don't give enough flexibility for people to demonstrate that they're no longer a threat. But, okay, so somebody has had a job as a treasurer in a public office. They worked in county government or city government or state government, and they embezzled tens of thousands, millions of dollars. And then they come out and they want to run for treasurer again. There are collateral sanctions that say you can't do that. Right. So some people will be like, oh, that's a good one. We shouldn't, maybe we shouldn't have that person run for that job again. But, and then there's other ones where you'd be like, oh, that makes sense. But when you get into a real story, it doesn't make sense. So, for example, if you put children in harm's way, can you later in life work in a daycare center? Well, people will be like, oh, no, definitely. Let's ban those people forever. Well, I had a client that she was a poor mother. She had very little income. She was receiving no child support. She has epilepsy. So she's in the middle of cleaning her house and she falls out with an epileptic seizure. The police get called. Somebody thankfully calls the emergency to come get her, rescue her. And the EMTs, on the way of taking her out to the hospital, which is, let's save this woman's life. Oh, she's got cleaning fluids out on the floor. She's got like chemicals, whatever, bleach and Pine Sol and whatever.
Yeah.
And they tag her, and her defense attorney didn't do a good job, but she gets a conviction. She pleads guilty to child endangerment for that, because she had an epileptic seizure while she was in the middle of cleaning her kitchen floor. So that, and then years later, she can't work as a daycare center. That's the only job she had. She ended up getting like fired. So that is where it's like these laws. There's a few of them where we might maybe say, okay, we don't want to have none of them, but they need to have a lot more flexibility built in. We need to scale them back for sure. We need to take a hard look and scale these way back, cut a lot of them out. And for the ones that stay, there needs to be like flexibility built in where it's not permanent, and it doesn't matter, like we can't ever hear the real story behind the offense, because if you don't listen to the real story, then there's no redemption.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. See, yeah, and I fully agree, and I think, but also we gotta differentiate between targeted sanctions and collateral sanctions. So certain targeted sanctions may make sense. So yes, you embezzle millions. Yes, I probably won't want you to be my stockbroker. So that is something that is targeted. You did it was a specific offense, and you guys barred from doing a specific thing. That is one thing, but that's not how collateral sanctions work. Collateral sanctions, the only thing I gotta have is a felony, and it bars me from all these things, whether it has correlation with my offense or not. And to me, I feel like they are akin to like the black codes in the Jim Crow South.
They're a lot like
it's
that.
Like they're a lot like that. But like the black codes were based on race. So like redlining, for example, it told black people where they could and they could not live. So the same thing happens with collateral sanctions. You tell people where they can and cannot live with housing restrictions based on just having a criminal record. So it's a different reason or a different excuse, but it's still the same difference. You get housing discrimination done. So it's almost like a different method to do the same thing. So and things like this, like I said, it doesn't actually keep the public safe, and a lot of the things are arbitrary. It doesn't have correlation with the offenses. So what about things that may have correlation with the offense? Let's say about violent offenders. Like how do you think that we should go about people who have violent offenses? How should we go about treating them when it comes to collateral sanctions?
Well, like I said, I think I might disagree with you a little bit. Like I don't think we just say like there's targeted sanctions and collateral sanctions. Like they're all collateral sanctions. Some of them make sense and some of them don't. Some of them are too broad. Some of them maybe make sense. Some of them don't. A lot of them don't. I think you're right that it's like the whole structure. I think this is a theme that you've touched on probably before in your podcast, is like the whole structure of the criminal punishment system is a way to like create a veil over racism, but then do the same thing that you, just like you said, it's like, well, it's fair in quotes, but then we can inflict not only the insult and harm of incarceration, but then forevermore after you come out, like what we're talking about, these collateral sanctions. So like with violent, like this, I mean, this is why we know each other, right? We didn't know each other because of collateral sanctions explicitly, but because I was your lawyer helping you, see if we can get you released early through a program run through the Ohio Justice and Policy Center called Beyond Guilt. And the whole theme, as you know, of the Beyond Guilt program is that there are lots, the innocent stories sometimes get a lot of press, which is good, showing that the criminal justice system makes big mistakes and people get locked up for things they did not do. But there is a lot of people who have turned their lives around, and society would be better, vastly better. The crime victims, everybody would be better. You are one of those people that would be better if you were not behind bars. It is a waste of humanity, time, money, everything. It's a waste of 1,000 different things to keep people behind bars. And it's going to be the same kind of waste if one of these collateral sanctions applies to you and keeps you from doing something that would be really beautiful, productive, valuable to the community. A great example, I'll give you the best example I have, because what got me into this was Gene Mays. Okay, Gene Mays is like, he kind of like impressed me with the depth of quality the same way you do. He's one of the most amazing people I've met, but he's one of my first people I worked for way back in like it was 2005. Gosh, it was a long time ago. He was an electrician. He had passed the civil service exam for the city of Cincinnati. He had got great references. He had gone through this union training electrician program. He was gold star electrician student, but he had on his record a drug trafficking offense. Now, he had shown, and he had records, and he had testimony, and he had other people vouching for him, showing like how he had fallen down in his life and gotten into drug addiction and eventually drug trafficking, and what he had done, the long, hard work he had done over 8 years, turning his life around. And he comes to the city of Cincinnati and says, I want to be an electrician. And he sits for the civil service exam. He's by far the most qualified person. And they say, no, we won't hire you. And instead, they do another round of the civil service exam, and no electricians passed. So they had to go to city council and ask for special permission to hire somebody to be an electrician for the city who didn't pass the civil service exam. And my guy, Gene, is sitting there like, are you kidding me? Are you kidding me? That's the waste of humanity we're talking about, right? That's the real story kind of waste. That you and your colleagues, people that you know, people that you're talking to, the whole point of this podcast, who you're speaking to here, there are people out there who have so much to offer to their community, to their town, it's just such a stupid waste that we would like lock them out and not listen and give them a second chance.
Mm-hmm. And your communities would be far safer if you were allow people to actually be able to change and actually be able to not only change, but to be able to come out and implement it. It is in my community's interest for me to come home and have employment. It is my community's interest for me to come home and have housing. You don't want me out there and feeling desperate. Because if I'm feeling too desperate because all these collateral sanctions or these restrictions, then I may go back to criminal behavior. And if I do, who is it going to hurt? It's going to hurt my community because I'm going to probably do it somewhere in my community. So the community is actually, public safety is actually hindered by collateral sanctions.
It's so true. For me, right? We know, this system is designed. Go ahead.
I can't like me myself. Like how do people tell you, okay, what you did was not okay. They say you can't be the robber, you can't be the drug dealer, you can't be the criminal. And you say, okay, fine. And they send you to this place that's supposed to be for rehabilitation. Then you take advantage of it, you change, you work on yourself, you change, but then 10 years later, 20 years later, people still are talking about they don't believe you. Or even if you do, like I say, if you do change, you always got that stigma of suspicion. What I can't do, leaving out of here, is keep dragging around the stigma from 20 years ago. I know the world don't doesn't owe anyone the benefit of the doubt. But what you do have to allow me to do is to prove myself in the moment, because a lot of these collateral sanctions are like the ones that you were talking about in employment. I feel like the quick fix, and you could correct me if I'm wrong, I feel like the best fix would be after a certain amount of time, so I should be able to have my record sealed. So I won't be able to be subject to this legal discrimination. What do you think about that?
That's right. So I think record sealing is one way to do it. So you would be shocked to discover that there are some collateral sanctions, and it functions through like a licensing board, like let's say the Board of Nursing. Some of those agencies are allowed to sort of pierce through expungements So they're like, oh yeah, your record was sort of expunged, but actually we can still find it. So, and the other problem, of course, is the problem of Mr. Google. Anybody, like even apart from official criminal, so a record sealing expungement, what you're talking about, will from the state government's version of your official criminal record will seal it. But then the problem is that people's record gets out in a couple different ways. One is just like if there's a news story, it's still out there and someone can Google it. So it's still findable that way. And the other thing is there are all these other background checking agencies that are like private companies. That's what they do. They're for a living. They somehow scrape data from the state governments and then create their own databases. And then they sell criminal record database information to employers. Now, when you get your record sealed from Hamilton County, Ohio, or Cuyahoga County, Ohio, and a state of Ohio is like, yes, okay, great, we're going to seal your record. The private agency doesn't do it. It's just the official government did it. And so the private agency that's still selling your information to the next employer that you're walking into, that the data is still out there. So there's a problem with record sealing. It's extremely leaky, I guess, is what I often tell people. Is like, yeah, you can get your record sealed, but there's issues there. So then another solution that we've come up with in Ohio is to make flexibility mandatory for certain people. So in the way that we do this is that, like, let's say there is one of those rules that, Jamel Dontez Hatcher does not has a felony record, therefore he can't have a license to do whatever. A state game warden. Did you know that? I always thought this was crazy. There was a law that said you could inspect the tanks, the gasoline tanks that are put in gas stations, the ones that go under the ground. A gas station has gasoline tanks under the ground, and you have to have a special license to be the gasoline tank installation inspector. Okay, it's a state thing, but that you could do that, but you could not be a state game warden. Now, a state game warden is somebody who goes out in the bushes and makes sure the raccoons are okay. Okay, so like these laws make no sense. But I say all that.
You could be the president.
Yeah, it's not. Well, yeah, as we know. But so what we did in Ohio is we built this thing called a CQE. And, this is, I think it's worth debating this with people out in the real world, in the field, people with criminal records, is whether that's helping them. I helped design these things. A CQE is a new law we passed in Ohio that says the law may say nobody with a felony record can be a state game warden or whatever. You want to be cosmetology or some there's pick the license. So, or nurse. If there's a rule that says thou shalt not ever give this employment license to somebody with a felony record, but that person with a felony record goes to their local court and applies for a CQE, which requires a lot of proof of redemption, the kind of thing that a story that you yourself could tell about yourself, like, here's what I've done to turn my life around. Look at all this redemption record, all this evidence. If you can marshal and bring forward all that kind of evidence and say, I want to get a CQE, the CQE acts as like a trump card, and forgive the word Trump, but it's like a trump card over the collateral sanction. It is a collateral sanction trump card. So if you are like, now I want to get that job in the hospital, but before I couldn't get it, I got a CQE now. The CQE says, now you have to consider me. Now you have to let me in. So the CQEs are and it's individual. You know what I mean? So the law still stands. There's the law that still says nobody with a felony record can ever do this thing. But this CQE is a way to get sort of like a personal exception to that law. So it doesn't necessarily get rid of the law. These collateral sanctions are still out there. The CQE is creating some flex so that certain people who demonstrate redemption can get a shot. It's been working for some folks. I don't know how well it's been working. I don't know the latest data and what's going on with that. But that is a unique thing. Not every state, very few states have that, but we have it in Ohio because of organizing. Because I worked with people like Fred Ward, your beautiful bride, talked about him before we got on the call. Fred Ward from Building Freedom, Ohio. I don't know if the video of this is going to be in the podcast, but shout out to Fred Ward and Building Freedom, Ohio. I'm holding up the T-shirt right now. Building Freedom, Ohio is a grassroots organizing campaign for formerly incarcerated people and their families. Very powerful. And it was that kind of group with the Ohio Organizing Collaborative going to Columbus and fighting for a shot at redemption, basically.
Yeah. So I know a lot of employers don't hire people because they could be found liable in a lawsuit. If they hire a felon, they could get that. So I think we need to do something that eliminates that, because I think a lot of people would hire people with felonies, but they scared of the liability that goes along with it. So they incentivize them not to hire people with felonies.
Right. So we thought of that, and we built that into the CQE. So that was the second benefit. Okay. So in addition to getting past the official legal barrier, the thing that says whatever the rule, blah, 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 that says you can't have a nursing license or whatever because of felony record. In addition, we said to the employers, there was the kind of lawsuit you're talking about is basically if you hire people with CQEs, you're protected from those lawsuits. People can't sue you for that.
Protected. That's what we need. Yeah.
Yeah, because that's exactly the thing we were concerned about. It's two different types of like legal problems, right? It's the legal problem of I can't get into the job because there's like a lock on the front door, the licensure thing. I can't get the license to work in this field. The second problem is the employer's just fear, which is rooted in a theoretical potential lawsuit. We wanted to take care of that too. So yeah, the CQEs are powerful in that way. Yeah, how many people are using them? How are they working out in the world? I unfortunately, I moved out of Ohio a little while ago, so I haven't been there to hear. Talking to people from Ohio Justice and Policy Center would be the bomb, just because we're the office that invented these things and got these things passed through the legislature, and we're the number one place in the state that's getting people them. Like people come to our office and we help them apply and get them. Of course, OJPC is in Cincinnati. It's Hamilton County only. So. How's it working in, Toledo? I don't know. How's it working in Columbus? I don't know.
What about housing? Things to help work with housing, because my personal story, and this is like I have a wife, and I'm gonna be able to go home to Minnesota.
Yes, sir.
But Ohio doesn't understand this. So in the state of Ohio, when I leave here, I will be homeless. I would be homeless. Like my grandmother, she would want to take me in. Like she literally just fell the other day, busted her head, had to get 9 stitches. She really needs somebody in the house with her. She will want me there. Yeah. She will want me there in a few months. But just because I have a felony record, Section 8 housing says no. I cannot go there. So literally, understand, my family could never take me in unless they move up economically. So it's almost like we've been penalized for our poverty. So we in Section 8 housing. So I literally would have to come home if I wasn't married, if I wasn't going to Minnesota. I would have to come home and be homeless. And who does that make safe?
It doesn't make sense.
Who does that keep safe? That I've done all this time, and I could and nobody gives a damn about anything that I've done in prison. I could talk about I'm the first to do this, I'm the first to do that, I did this, did that. When I come home, you are homeless. So I come home forced into homelessness.
Yeah.
So I think do you have anything or what?
Well, there was some discussion. I don't think it passed. I don't know if it ever passed, but of expanding the effect of the CQEs to also give you greater access to housing. I don't know if that was just something moving to the legislature after I left. So that's a great question. I mean, you make a couple good points. One is the federal law related to Section 8, public housing, is the only absolute barrier is if you were cooking meth in public housing. So that's the only actual law that's on the books that says you cannot go back to Section 8. If you have any other kind of offense, even felony records, it's actually not a mandatory barrier. But some of the local housing authorities add on extra little bonus barriers. So what you're talking about is something that can be changed. Yeah, it's beyond federal law, but they're allowed to create local policies. It's just they're going too far with them. So, there's some advocacy that could and should be done with people's local public housing authorities to loosen up some of these restrictions. I think the other theme here that we're getting at the bottom of all this, of course, is that the criminal punishment system is not and never was designed really for safety. If it was about safety, then it would care a lot about redemption. It would care a lot about turning your life around. It would care a lot.
Common sense reintegration.
The system would care a great deal about your success upon release. And in fact, it might not put you behind bars in the first place, right? Because we know that bars aren't actually helpful.
Yeah.
But instead of the system actually being about producing safety, it is about producing punishment for punishment's sake. It is about insulting, denigrating, pushing down, holding down, just keeping people under the thumb of the law. And that's why the frustration is there. That's why people, everyone knows the Dead Prez song, right?
Why do you think that is?
You wonder why we feel like F the law. That song is so true. Like every time I hear it, I'm like, that's true. That's exactly the way it is.
How the lyric go?
You wonder why. Well, that means you wonder why we feel like fuck the law. You wonder why we burn our cities down.
Okay.
The Dead Prez. I don't know if you've ever heard that.
I can't cuss my wife on.
I'm sorry. Yeah, you got to beep that one out of the podcast. Sorry.
No, we gonna take it off. No, we gonna keep it raw.
Oh, okay. So anyway, good song. Oldie but a goodie. So. The deep frustration, why is the law structured like that? Well, it has a lot to do with racism. It has a lot to do with, we know that police from the get-go were about, slave catchers. That's kind of where police forces came from.
Yeah, for sure.
It's all rooted in a very racialized structure that's produced, to hold down one class of people, but also for the benefit of another class. Let's not ever hide that this is to benefit wealthy white people. That is what
the money.
That's right. This is to benefit, to make them feel good, to make their neighborhoods look a certain way, to make them feel some kind of way about safety, and so they can keep extracting from
line their pocket. The prison industrial complex.
That's right.
The more people come back to prison, the more Airmark gonna be able to save you some chicken dinners.
That's right. And now they're trying to, those it's everything. Those electronic monitor bracelets on people's ankles, right? That's private money. Everything is cha-ching. Every little piece and part of the criminal justice system, cha-ching. It's another dollar dime in somebody's pocket somewhere.
And the people that suffer is the communities which they talking about they protecting, but you fear-monger my community into shunning me upon my return. But in all actuality, I want people to understand that the people that they're telling you to fear, these are our sons and daughters. These are our brothers and sisters. They're coming back to our communities. The people who peddling this stuff, they living somewhere behind the gate. And like I said, if I come home and collateral sanctions, and I've done all this wonderful stuff, but collateral sanctions cuts me off at the knees to where I don't feel like I can have nothing. I'm trying, and I'm getting cut off at the knees. A lot of people will think that they will go back to their criminal behavior. They will go back to what they know. They will go back to what's familiar. And when they do, they are going to hurt the community. And then if they hurt the community and we send them back, like I said, Airmark is going to sell that person a chicken dinner, and they're going to get more money. And they're going to come on the taxpayer's dime.
That's right. It's crazy. It's sheer madness, really. It is. It's a little bit after 7. I know your clock is ticking. I just want to make sure we cover anything. The one thing I just want to mention, we had this in Ohio for a while. It's not anymore functional. I hope it comes back online. We built a database there. So because there's so many of these laws, they cover so many areas of life. They cover so many jobs. They affect so many different types of crimes, even misdemeanors. And it's really complicated. We built a database.
You have 1 minute remaining.
Okay, it's called Civic.
She get too deep. She wants us off. She wants us.
CIVICC, Civic Ohio. It was a database of laws. We'll try to bring that back online so people can search there and see how crazy the laws are. Any last thoughts you want out of me, or you just want to wrap it up? Go ahead.
We're gonna wrap it up. I want to thank you again for coming through, and you're welcome anytime to come through and talk to the people.
It's an honor. Thank you.
Hey,
thank
signing
you.
off.
All right, get free. Talk to you later. All right.